Hi, everyone. This is Rob Doggett here for another Yeats conversation, and I'm speaking today with Akiko Manabe. I am, of course, with the International Yeats Society in the State University of New York at Geneseo, and I know Akiko from working with her on the International Yeats Society board and from reading your recent article that you published in the Journal of International Yeats Studies. So it's a real pleasure to see you, Akiko. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Rob, for inviting me here. I'm okay. We are now having at the beginning of the spring here, and I'm very glad to be with you. How about you, Rob?
I'm doing okay. I'm in my office late and grading papers. So this is a nice break, and it's still snowing outside today, but it's the weather's going to improve at some point here soon. And I'm looking forward to it. And so by way of introduction, I should have mentioned, so you're a professor at English at Shiga University in Japan. And I know that you're incredibly involved with Yeats and with modernism. You're on the board of a number of different societies. Mentioned the International Yeats Society, the Yeats Society of Japan, the Ezra Pound Society of Japan, ISOL Japan, and of course, you're the secretary for the Japan Ireland Society. So it sounds like you're busy. What are some of your current projects that you're working on?
I've just finished writing an article on a comedy farce Ezra Pound wrote as Kyogen. Kyogen, I'm going to talk more
Okay,
today.
sure.
And he wrote it intended to put it on stage as a premiere performance of as a Hawkswell, but it didn't work. And but I just studied about it, and also I'm translating Introduction to No and No Masks into English, and I just got a 3-year grant from Japanese governmental on a grant, and I'll continue to work on Yeats, Pound, and in relationship no Kyogen and other Japanese traditional drama form and the stage.
Oh, that sounds great. So we were talking one time, and I know that you were involved with the early productions of a Kyogen style version of the Cat and the Moon. I don't think you were with the initial production, but then you were involved with it when they went on the tour in Ireland. And I know you've been talking a lot with the directors and the performers. So I thought maybe we could start with that, your experiences of the development of this play in the Kyogen style and the experience of touring, seeing it on tour.
Okay. So can I share the screen because it's easier for you, the audience, to know what Kyogen is and the feel of the Kyogen?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Just a moment. What? Mm, Here we go.
Gosh, it
This
looks
is
great.
this is
Yeah, looks wonderful.
yeah,
Wow.
this is Cat and the Moon in a Kyogen style, and I was one of the producers that took these Kyogen plays of the Cat and the Moon to Ireland in 2017. And it's a Korean style performance, and that this one came true with support by many people like Sean Gordon in
Oh, sure,
International Society
sure.
and the Embassy of Japan in Dublin. And the further left is the beginning of the Cat and the Moon with a blind man is carrying the lame man over
Hmm. Hmm.
his shoulder, and this
Hmm.
is in Dublin, the Smoke Alley Theater. And the other things too, this is the final scene of the saint and the lame man dancing together. And this is a stage in Sligo at where the blue raincoat.
The Blue
Yeah,
Raincoat, sure.
yeah,
They do a lot of great productions of Yeats.
yeah.
Are those
Yeah.
the costumes are incredibly striking. Are those ones that one would see in traditional no theater, or is this
Yeah.
it
This
is
is from the traditional Kyogen style theater costumes they wear, and well, Shall we talk a little bit about Kyogen and No?
Yeah, that's
Because
one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I think like a lot of people, I sort of came to Yeats's dance plays, learning a little bit about No, but I didn't have a deep understanding at all, and I don't think I still don't of the some of the nuances and distinctions and really the broader traditions of Japanese theater. So I'm interested in. I know that I realize that the Kyogen's a kind of comic interlude,
yeah,
but that's about all I know. So I'd like to hear you talk about that a bit
it's
more.
a great knowledge you have. Actually, I myself didn't know about No and Kyogen much until I was a graduate student, and I learned No and Kyogen through Yeats because
Hmm.
there was a
Wow.
course in Yeats, and the teacher taught us the No and Kyogen. And before then, I was born and raised up in Kyoto. That's a very we can enjoy No and Kyogen in many occasions, but I was evading that because I thought it's an old style, very difficult type of stage. But actually, once you're involved, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. And as you said, Kyogen is a traditional Japanese comedy or farce, and it is played together with more serious and tragic no plays to release the tension
Hmm.
uh, created by no. And no and Kyogen were established together in 14th century in Japan, and Yeats know the difference of No and Kyogen, and as everybody knows, most of the people knows, he knows about No through knows No so complicated, knows about No through Ezra Pound and Ernest Fenollosa, and he wrote as a Hawkswell in 1916. And after that, he knew because as the Hawkswell or the Dreaming of the Bones, those kind of dramas that was influenced by No, it's very serious and tragic, and he wanted to write Kyogen style on farce or comedy, and he wrote this Cat on the Moon, and he himself said, I intended my plays, The Cat on the Moon, to be what Japanese call kyogen, to come as a relaxation. And
Sure.
uh, I'll show you some images of No and kyogen, then you can tell the difference. And here we go. This is sorry. This is our Sligo Irish. This is a
Playbill.
report.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a flyer poster we put everywhere in Ireland. And, and this is no, this is from the very famous, for Japanese, very famous old tale of Genji. And this is, well, you can tell he's a handsome young warrior,
Mhm.
tragic, but he is a ghost. And on the left is also from the tale of Heike. And he's another tragic, young, handsome warrior. And on the right is from a Chinese history. This is a very famous empress of the Yokihi, the very famous emperor. And these are, again, ghosts, but they are very gorgeous in gorgeous costume and the
Oh,
serious. And these are another one on our left is this is woman, but this is also coming from the old Japanese literature. Tale of Issei, everybody in Japan knows, and this woman is wearing her late husband or costume and headdress, and looking herself in the well, and the reflection she saws him with me, with herself,
for
one
sure.
with herself.
Mhm.
And the other one is Sumidaga. Some of you might know that Benjamin Britten wrote an opera based on Sumidagawa, and this is a mad woman because she became mad because she lost her child, and she is searching for her child.
Mhm.
And this is sort of monster, and but very dramatic. But this monster also is from the Japanese mythology, quite close to Irish mythology of Tuatha De Danann, because these monsters were driven into the earth because the present Japanese came to Japan and drove them away in the underworld.
Mhm.
And this is no, and this is Kyogen.
Ah, I see.
So
Yeah,
difference. Yeah,
yeah.
everyone's laughing and dancing and funny, and it's a farce. So you can tell the image from the image. I think you share a bit of the sense of Kyogen, and no, I'll stop the sharing. And so
Are they so the no style, I mean the costuming and the effects, for example, the monster
mm,
have a look to me as if they have a more operatic or kind of grander feel
yeah,
to them, whereas the Kyogen looked like almost like a I'm thinking about old style American comedy like Abbott and Costello or something you might not know, but there's sort of comic pairs there and a bit more of that kind of physical
yeah.
comedy and sort of slapstick sort of
Mhm.
elements, if you know that term. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
it's sort of the physical comedy and more less of that sort of high
Mhm.
elevated sort of sensibility to it.
Yeah, that's exactly. Your understanding is perfect. You're such a good student.
I've been working at it. I've been work I'm on I learned, these conversations, I always I enjoy them so much because I learn every single conversation, and they help my teaching quite a bit. And right now I'm teaching a course on Yeats, and we just finished at the Hawkswell, and we're going
Oh,
to do the Cat in the Moon
good. Great.
right after our spring break. And this is really helpful to think about that distinction because I do feel as if a lot of, or at least for me, I really had this vague sense of a blending together of all no into one and all Japanese plays in the style into one. And this is a very helpful distinction you're making. How did people respond to it on the tour?
The tour, it was fantastic. I in Dublin, in Sligo, and in Waterford, we
Uh-huh.
went, and all the different response. And but uh, every place, everybody liked it. And in Dublin, I think the audiences know about on stage, and the audience is very sophisticated, but they are involved. And in Sligo, the response was very warm-hearted, and
I
they
bet.
are very enjoyed, and we got the standing ovation, and we are very, very happy. And in Sligo, ours are sorry evening uh, stage, and on the same day, Blue Raincoat did their own Cat and the Moon, so
Okay.
we could and the audience could enjoy the difference, and so different, but both
What were the main differences?
the Blue Raincoat their stage were more with mysterious mood with the blue light, and they insisted more on dark light and the mystery of the moon. And in Kyogen, they are more using their own style, making it though it's a very serious play, but they make it comical, and then through the comicalness, they try to uh, let the audience know what the Yeats's intention is. And I was quite impressed by both plays. So different, but the catches the audience's
That,
heart.
that must be wonderful to see. I wish I could see the two side by side. I have seen the Blue Raincoat, a Blue Raincoat production of The Cat in the Moon, and I remember that the sort of in that space is very dark, and that lighting, and it's very much a mood play. And I
Mhm.
remember feeling it was more serious than, as I've been talking with you about Kyogen style, that I would expect from the Kyogen style. Now, in your article, you talk about laughter in
Yeah.
Kyogen, and that is interesting to me because it's not simply the way we tend to think of comic laughter. That laughter has a lot of different meanings in that convention. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. There are so many different levels of laughter, and basically, Kyogen is uh, comedy, and so that makes audience relax and laugh because they are very become tight because of the tragic no. But so sometimes it's a very sincere kind of laughter, just funny, and but sometimes like Kyogen becomes very ironic and cruel. And the characters in no Kyogen, as you see, are mostly anonymous human beings, just common people. And
Mhm,
as you know, because they know that protagonists are god, monster, famous
mhm,
aristocratic
mhm,
people, a famous warrior. But the Kyogen plays, most of the people are in common folks, and often the stories are based on local folk tales
mhm,
or um, beliefs rooted in reality of common people. So that they dealing with the daily life of Japanese medieval period. And in the Japanese medieval period, as you can tell, life of commoners in a feudal system, peasants, servants of samurai warriors were not necessarily easy, but these commoners appear in Kyogen with energetic personalities and filled with life and always um, laughing away that the hard reality
mhm,
or accept the reality as is. And servants make fun of their masters, peasants quarrel each other to get water into their own field with funny acting, like throwing mass to each other, for
mhm,
example.
mhm,
And so we see the when we see the peasants and the servants were trying to use their own wisdom, witty wisdom, and make fun of the people, and we laugh. But we knew reality must have been very hard. But caricaturing of the reality, they laugh away their own reality. And sometimes they deal with the cruel matters of the like the in the Cat on the Moon, the blind people or the physically challenged people,
mhm,
but they accept the reality of their blindness or the physically challenged part disability.
mhm,
And it's cruel. We know it's cruel, but still, because Kyogen also they sing, chant, and dance and make it very lightheartedly, casually, trying to entertain audience. And also they are making actors themselves seems to enjoy themselves on the stage. So we can one with the stage and then enjoy what's going on the stage. And
mhm,
though it's a medieval, most of the dramas are made in 14th, 16th, 17th century, but still we understand and we enjoy because what they deal with is the universal matters.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm. It seems really interesting that there's this kind of mix of experiences in laughter, because the idea of laughing in cruelty, and we can understand that, and that in itself, characters being cruel to each other can produce a certain kind of laughter, but it's, I think on the part of the audience, it sounds as if there's a kind of joyfulness as well, so that it's not a derisive laughter. It's not so much a mocking laughter on the part of the audience, even if the people on stage might be engaging in cruel laughter of each other. But the overall experience is that of a kind of joyfulness in the face of hardship. And
Yeah.
that is universal, of course, and that's one of the reasons we go to the theater. I think for me personally, just thinking about Yeats, I I I think there are moments in Yeats that can be funny, but I don't often think of comedy in Yeats, and this is a useful way to think about how Yeats's plays operate in this comic register, and often are combining different moods between the high seriousness and this comedy. Um, do you, so I remember the word, and I was reading a play again earlier today, and it struck me, and I thought about your article. You talked about the word flighty and how important that is. Um, why is that such an important word for you in the play? And I think the Irish connotation is sort of someone who's flighty is sort of like, they make, I don't know, obvious sort of mistakes. They're sort of short-sighted about things. They're sort of comically bumbling because they're flighty. There's also an element, I think, of vision in being flighty, a capacity for, which is a sort of different idea of flighty. But anyway, I know in your article you talked about how important that word is. So I wonder if I'd like to hear you expand upon that a little bit.
On Friday, as you said, in the Irish meaning, that kind of meaning also there was that kind of meaning, and also Enach, Enach, is it the Irish word, Gaelic word for flighty?
I don't know the Gaelic word for it. I bet some viewers would know, but I'm not great with Irish words.
I'm not, but the word originally from Enoch, and because Yeats tried to use the Hiberno English here very much, and so I think it's he's trying to use the Gaelic or the Irish,
Yeah. Yeah.
Celtic or Druidic tradition, and the flighty Enoch and the flighty has light as an air on the nuance of the light and air, and flighty itself has F sound is very light, and flying, and light as an adjective, and also the light from the sky as a noun. And the combination of that kind of image is in the flighty too, I thought. And flighty is used 6 times for describing the lame man, lame beggar. And well, shall we talk about a little bit about the story of the Ketam? We just story is about as many of you know probably about the Saint Coleman's Well, about the mystery of the Saint Coleman's Well, that is located near Torbarri, where Yeats used to live, and the main characters are 2 beggars, and one is blind and the other is lame, and blind man is carrying the as we saw in the image, the blind man is carrying the lame man because blind man can use his legs and the lame man can use his eyes, so they are helping each other. And they were strolling, wandering over 40 years here and there, and mostly seeming to stealing and eating, getting food from others on the house, and he tried to. He came to they come to the they try to find the Saint Coleman's Well because they want their physical disabilities to be back to normal, and they come to the Saint Column as well, and they hear the voice of the saint and Saint Coleman, and Saint Coleman asks them, "Would you like to be blessed, or would you like to be cured?" And the blind man, who is more physical and down to earth and knows how to live in the world, chose to be cured. And the lame man, of course, he wanted to be cured, but while he was talking with the saint, he feels like being blessed might be good. He doesn't think so seriously. That might be grand. And I want my name to be listed in the book of the martyrs or the blessed. So I'll choose to be blessed. And he's always he's very casual, and he doesn't think so much, and he chooses what and his behavior is very well, sort of superficial, but he chooses what is right. And the flighty, first of all, describes that kind of layman's decision and a way of living very well. And
I think it's interesting you use the word decision there too, because I was talking with my students the other day about an Irish airman foresees his death, and we were talking a bit about, as one does sometimes, we got into some existential philosophy. We're talking about Nietzsche and that sort of stuff. But I was stressing this the distinction between decision and choice, and I think the blind man is much more calculating, and that's he's making a choice and he's thinking about outcomes and practical terms, whereas the lame man's making a decision. It's sort of in the moment. It's not about, it's less about calculations and more about the act of deciding. And I think you're saying here, there's a flightiness in that quality of deciding that's different from the more mundane sort of rational calculation of the blind man thinking about the outcomes. And as you said earlier, more focused, I think, more grounded in a sense, more tied to the land and thinking in those terms about material reality now and what can be done with what he can gain if he has his sight.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, and well,
Do you think the so the flightiness is part also, I think of the transformation that occurs in the way that it's linked to the dance, and that the way in which the blind man, he's thinking about what he can do and the things he can get from now that he has sight, whereas the lame man initially isn't sure what's really happened to him. And then the saint suggests that he bless the roads by dancing, and the description of the dance is and he's initially sort of faltering, and then he becomes more fluid in the dance. And so it seems like the dance is very much tied in with this kind of transformation of the lame man, and tied in with the notion of flightiness, a kind of ascendancy. So
yeah,
I wonder how you, as someone who's been, involved, really involved with these kinds of productions, how you see the dance in that.
dance. Yeah, dance at the end. As you said, the saint asks. Well, saint first says to the lame man, "Bless the road," and the lame man says, "I don't know the words to bless the road," and the saint said, "I'm sorry." Saint says, "You don't need the words to bless. You just dance."
Yeah.
And first, the layman's dance is very clumsy, and the saint seems like saint is teaching the dance. And then gradually, the layman follows. First, he follows the way the saint tells them how to do it. But gradually he become more elegant or more used to it, and becoming naturally he begins to dance. And in the Kyogen version, as you saw on the image, Saint was physically there on the stage. So in Kyogen version, first the saint sings and sings in Kyogen kota chanting way, and dance in the Kyogen komai dancing ways, and then the layman follows the saint, and they become first he saint first and then layman second, but finally they becomes dancing together, very wonderfully unite together, and they become we see the moment that they become united and one and integrated when we they see the moon. It was a choreography. They saw the moon as the final moment. They become beautifully one. And the saint, as a poem, Cat on the Moon says, Saint learns the new turn or new step, and the saint also tired of the courtly fashion, and he saint runs the the moon runs the courtly fashion, and he runs a new step, and that worked very beautifully. And in a sense, in between blind man and lame man. Blind man is physical and down to the earth, and lame man who chose to be blessed, however casually, is more spiritual. But when you see the saint and the layman is like in the poem in The Cat on the Moon, the cat part looking at the moon and wandering around on the earth, and the saint is like moon. So looking at the moon, the cat is looking at the moon, and the cat is wander around. That is like layman is wander around on the earth, and the saint is on the
Moon looking down, yeah.
and but they become one.
And they
And
become
then and also it is like Geyer in the corn.
yeah.
So finally they become one. But it was the wonderful thing about the Kyogen production is after they become one, and when they go back to the backstage, the director Kaoru Matsumoto let the layman again walking not healthy, but using the stick as a leg again. So it is there is no stable stopped ideal moment like a gyre. It's moving all the time.
That's right, and that makes sense to me because at the end of the play, there's that emphasis on change and transformation, and so it's in some ways about a continual, ongoing transformation. Whereas a particular understanding of the play would be a transcendence that then becomes a kind of stasis, because once the lame man reaches this state of being blessed, then that can harden into an ideal of blessedness that becomes in a way static. And you're talking about is the way that the direction choice emphasizes what I think is in the play, which is this ongoing sense of transformation. I mean, the Geyers never stop in Yeats, and so the transformation is continually occurring, and that makes sense to me as a way of thinking about the play. Does Kyogen have a set style of dancing?
Yes, they have different kinds of level of dancing, and director Kaoru Matsumoto chooses on one set of the dancing, but combination of various steps and the way of the set dancing, I think, and also he chooses the way Kyogen chanting.
Right, you
In
mentioned that too. So yeah, how does Kyogen chanting? There's a particular, again, a set style of Kyogen chanting.
Yeah, yeah, and it worked. Strangely worked. From the beginning, the saint sings in the Kyogen chanting way and walking into the stage, and immediately the atmosphere was changed,
Mm-hmm.
and it was funny. And it is an Irish setting, but Kyogen chanting, and we see on the stage that costumed Japanese actor with a mask um, singing in Japanese, modern Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
and in in Irish production, we put the screen and put the Yeats script behind,
Okay, so
but
people can see the
it
words.
worked.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds great. I want to just two more quick questions if we still have time.
Yeah.
In your article, you mentioned that the characterization of the saint is based on partly on the Japanese labor leader Toyohiko Kagawa.
Mhm.
I didn't know anything about that, and I'd never encountered that before in the notes. So I was curious what you were, if you could again expand a little bit about that.
Yeah, Teruhiko Kagawa also, that is, I'm still working on because I myself didn't know much about him, and he is not known so much in Japan anymore. But he is he's a leader of labor movement in Japan, and he passed away in 1960. So he was born 1888, so
Hmm.
on almost contemporary, a little bit later than
Hmm.
Yeats, but a
Hmm.
contemporary labor movement leader. And he himself is a very strong believer of Christianity. And
Hmm.
he became a pastor himself. And he wrote autobiographical novel called Before the Dawn. And Yeats said he read it, and he quite was quite impressed by it. It Before the Dawn I read. It is a very interesting novel, but not so much literary successful novel. But it was very popular those days in Japan, I heard. And Kagawa himself, about the Kagawa, Yeats wrote in his note to the Cat on the Moon, he is a saint, and and also he Yeats didn't say he is a saint in the Cat on the Moon, but he said Kagawa is a Japanese saint, and the Kagawa uh, was he himself was on because of the disease. He several times in his early age he saw the uh, he was about to die, and
Hmm.
he came back to life. And also
Hmm.
he had a very sad, tragic growing up. And based on that background, uh, after he was recovering from the serious illness, he decided to help people,
Hmm.
and especially the people who are in the slum. And also, he wants to educate the children in the slum because they are just born and very in this desperate state without education, and
Mhm.
They do not live long. They didn't live long, and so he went into the slum and help the people there. And he saw many beggars, like the people like beggars, and he was not accepted at first, and he was beaten
Mhm.
he was beaten and almost robbed, and just like the blind man was doing to the
Mm.
lame man. But he's he was even with that he was helpful to the people there, and I thought the saint in the cat and the moon, the essential heart of the saint is warm acceptance and
Mhm.
laughter. And the saint is the only one who laughs in the cat and moon. So laughter is a very important part in the saint. And the saint always he says he's lonely and he wants a friend. And saint who says, I want a friend, I want lonely, is very strange to me, but he is very human. And Kagawa seems like very much like that kind of characteristics he has. And and Yeats is mentioning Kagawa in the um, his own note in to the
Mhm.
cat and the moon,
Mhm.
very carefully about the Japanese saint. And so I was I was connecting him to the characterization of the saint, but I should be more specific and more. My explanation is so bad. I'm
No,
sorry about
it's okay. I think that, as you're talking, there's a ton of stuff I was thinking about, but the complexity of Yeats maybe drawing upon him as inspiration for the saint changes how we think about saints in the function of the saint in the play. And it ties in with something I was thinking about earlier as you were talking, is the idea of transformation and joyful laughing, and that combination of sort of suffering that we talked about at the outset, and hardship that Kagawa clearly experienced, and that sort of joyfulness, um, and that capacity to laugh out of that, and the combination of the two. And so I think it's fitting, and it helps me to understand the mood of the play a little bit more, because when we encounter saints, and I was Catholic upbringing, and so I had lots of saints. I wore necklaces and other scapulars with saints on them, and I took a saint's name in my confirmation and all that. So I had plenty of saints when I was a young man. And we think of saints as distant, but also sort of static, and like just they've transcended, and now they're up in heaven, and they're these kind of stable things like the moon, right? Except distant and far off. And you're talking about saints as part of this idea of transformation and constant motion, and the unifying of the saint with the lame man, or that kind of dance, not so much unity, but that changing interplay of the two. So it's helping me to think a bit differently about the overall mood of the play, and the kind of complex symbolism, and the way that Yeats never just adopts elements from religion in a way that conforms to sort of standard traditional notions or orthodox notions, but always with a difference. So I think I think your explanation is really helpful. It gives us a lot to think about as we teach. I wanted to close by just asking you um, how you think about the importance of a knowledge of Japanese theater for people who want to stage Yeats's plays. I was in teaching the Hawkswell and some of the other on Balustrade. I was trying to find, well, not so much on Balustrade because it's not a dance play, but at the Hawkswell, I was trying to find um, recordings of it at performances, and there aren't a ton out there, and some of them are kind of bad and strange. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know how, but I'm not sure if that's a function. In some ways, I think it's a function of that Yeats is just plays are hard to stage, especially the dance plays, and can sort of look corny if they're not made just right. But also, I wonder if it has to do with how important it is for people who are putting on these plays, producing these plays, directing these plays, to be familiar with the Japanese theater traditions. What do you think of that?
Well, from my experience, as I told you, the Irish production was accepted very well, and so without any Japanese knowledge,
Yeah.
Japanese theater knowledge, you can
Hmm.
put on stage, and but at the same time, if more and more people see the Japanese style, the Kyogen or no style, the Yeats plays, uh, people abroad without knowledge of Japanese theater can get access to Yeats more easily. That might be the case because Yeats learned from No and Kyogen just from the script or the some Japanese Ito or the others' help, but he himself learned from the script of the No and Kyogen, and he created something different.
Hmm.
So the audience also can find something different from their exposure to the now is it's the age is different from the Yeats days, so we can easily go to Ireland, America, wherever
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
the players and no players, and so I think the more opportunity to see them, see people abroad see the production of New and Kyogen and its plays, that would be fantastic, I think.
Yeah, I think for me that what you're talking about here is the value of these transcultural and transnational sorts
Mm.
of exchanges. And I think sometimes when I'm talking to my students about Yeats and the East more broadly, one of the first things they always start talking about is cultural appropriation and this sort of, and they bring up things like Orientalism. And and certainly there's, people have written about this. Joe Lennon has a book, on Irish Orientalism, et cetera. Like there are elements of that in Yates, but there's also what I really like in Yates is I don't often feel like it's any sort of simple, cultural appropriation move. There's always this kind of cultural exchange going on in the creation of something else. And I think the dramatization of these plays in this kind of exchange and the ability for different audiences to see them awakens us to the degree to which that kind of really beautiful exchange is going on with Yeats all the time. So I think it's a good reminder of that. Well,
And
this is a lot of fun. I
yeah,
I enjoyed talking with you today. So I hope to see you maybe in Sligo this summer, or maybe at the next International Yates Society meeting. So it's great seeing you. Take care.
yeah, you take care. Thank you, Rob.
Bye bye.